Good morning, Troy Love.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm doing well. The sun is shining again. So I live in Arizona and we had a couple of days of rain, and I immediately went back to my, oh my gosh, this is never going to stop, like when I lived in Michigan and it was cloudy for a week. And I was like, no, it's Arizona. The sun will come out again, a little from Little Orphan Annie. The sun will, come out tomorrow. So it did. It's sunny. So
It
that
is. It's
does
still
improve my
cold.
mood. It's still cold, but it immediately improves my mood, even though I'm trying really hard to go, it's temporary, we need the rain, all of that. I just still get oof, it's hard,
I hear
but
you. I
yeah.
hear you. And relative cold. My
Yes.
buddy in Colorado was saying, it's 32 degrees outside today, 0 degrees Celsius for those of you in Canada. And I'm like, yeah, it's like 50 degrees this morning.
Yes, and I'm whining because, like, I had to wear my hat and gloves when I'm out running this morning. Brr, it's so cold. So yeah, it's
hmm
so funny. But so we have a question. I'm a dismissive avoidant type. I have, and let's talk, when you start answering this, please talk about those types because a lot of people may not understand what that means. I have a history of burning bridges in most of my relationships and tend to just cut out and run. Maybe that's a pretty good explanation of it. How do I overcome this and have healthier relationships?
Thank you for your question. So, there's different styles of attachment. The three ones that are most common are avoidant and anxious and then secure, and then there's variants of those three. So an anxious attachment style is somebody who's really worried that you're going to abandon me or you're going to leave me or whatever, and so they really are kind of clingy and anxious. And um, I hate to use the word needy because I always say that we're only as needy as our unmet needs, but they do have this need on one side, and then on the other side we have the avoidance, which are people who say I want to have a relationship with you, but don't get too close because you may hurt me. So both are afraid of being hurt. They just handle it in a different way. And so as I'm hearing this person's question, this person is saying they are dismissive and avoidant. Dismisses is a part of that avoidant part where, hey, I'm just gonna blow you off. I'm just gonna push you away. I'm gonna keep my walls up. I'm gonna keep my guard up because I don't want to get hurt. And so if I let you in, there's a higher chance that you're going to hurt me. That vulnerability goes up. And so it's easy for me to just fire you, write you off, instead of practicing that vulnerability. So this person has some insight as to the consequences of that. He's saying that there's a history of burning bridges, and it really does destroy a lot of relationships. The book Attached that came out probably about 10 years ago indicated that there's a whole lot of people in the avoidant pool in the dating pool. There's a lot of avoidance,
Mm,
people who have avoidant type. Why? Well, because they have a really hard time with that long-term intimate relationship. So if if you're trying to if you just recently broke up or something and you're now looking, the chances are that you're going to be dating or finding somebody who is a little bit more avoidant. Underneath that is that they are really afraid of being hurt. So when we look at those attachment wounds, loss, neglect, rejection, abandonment, betrayal, and abuse, chances are that that person who has an avoidant personality, or not personality, but avoidant attachment style, is really underneath it. There's a lot of pain. And they may not even really want to go there, and they definitely don't want to let you in because the pain is so intense. So as I'm reading that, part of that is, number one, there is some awareness already that that's the style. Now, depending on who you talk to, like if you read the authors from the book, they don't think that you can actually change your attachment style. I don't personally agree with that. I believe that when we can create safety in a relationship, I'm more willing to be able to put my guard down. So part of what you can do as you're trying to change that is find out what you need for safety. And for me, the easiest way to start at least getting a head start on that is identifying what are my wounds. So if I have a rejection wound or an abandonment wound or a neglect wound, for example, I think about what the opposite of that is. And so the opposite of rejection is I need acceptance. The opposite of neglect is I need presence. The opposite of rejection, they say that. The opposite of rejection is I need acceptance. The opposite of neglect, I need presence. The opposite of abandonment is somebody to be there, not don't leave. If I can feel like I can be open with you and you're not going to do any of those things, I'm more likely to be able to step in a little closer. I'm more likely to be willing to be a little bit more vulnerable. So, on one hand, it's creating safety. On the other is being courageous. So, Brene Brown talks about vulnerability being this double-edged sword because you when you're vulnerable you absolutely risk the chances of one of your wounds being hurt, ripped open, poked, whatever, but you also risk being loved, seen, noticed, accepted, appreciated. You also risk that, and that requires some courage to be willing to step into this. So maybe as you're looking at trying to form some relationships with some people, maybe a friend, maybe if you try it, maybe not as intensely with a romantic partner, but you just try a trusted friend, and say, okay, and you can even say it out loud, I'm going to try to be a little bit vulnerable here, and I'm going to share whatever it is that I'm going to share. And then I'm going to say, this is what I need, and see if the other person can show up for you and meet that need in one way or another. So it's a little bit of both courage to try to be vulnerable and also recognizing I do have some wounds. I need some safety to be able to have that vulnerability. And I might need to do some work about healing those wounds altogether so that they don't continue to hijack my ability to connect with others. And there's lots of different ways that can be done through various forms of therapy, and coaching and those kind of things to help heal those wounds.
One of the things, because it said in most of my relationships, and I thought even with friends, I suspect that it's challenging to be in a friendship, a non-romantic relationship with somebody who's an avoidant type, because, even those kind of relationships will bump up against those wounds and, the cut and run, this person isn't safe. I'm gonna leave. I was thinking too when you're talking about the book Attached and how they don't think things can change, and I thought there's probably always going to be a tendency to have this, as your type or your
Mm-hmm.
style, but I do think that we can grow through and we can learn, and we can be brave and go. I've gotten burned, bunches of times along the way, and every single time I'm willing to put myself out there, because most of my relationships I don't. Most
Mm-hmm.
of the time it works out for me. Every now and then I'm going to get burned, and but to live insulated and protected, would not be a meaningful style for me. I need, I know I need other people. I know I need to be connected. So I'm willing to get burned now and then. I'm willing to show up and put myself out there because, like you said, then I get the all the benefits. Because if I'm protecting myself from the scary parts, I'm also keeping myself from getting all the really good stuff. So I've noticed this pattern in most of my relationships, not only with friends, but also with doctors, therapists, coaches, etc. Oh, that's like really like no one is safe. Doesn't that
Mm-hmm.
sound like?
Yeah. There's I'm hearing that in some ways I can relate. Like I have a tendency to fire people, or I used to. Like if it wasn't working, you're out. Sorry,
Mm,
you're out. And I realized that my list of friends was really getting small, um, and that wasn't good for me. So I don't know your specific situation, but I can relate to that fear of being hurt, and so I just would rather not. Like for example, I live in a pretty transient area. I stopped counting after more than 100 of my friends who've lived here moved away. I literally have more than 100 friends who've moved away.
Wow.
Um, there is this tendency then when somebody new moves in to my community, my church or whatever, I don't want to reach out to them again. Like I'm hold back. There's that avoidant part. Like I'm not going to. They try to reach out and connect. I don't engage. That's the dismissive part because I don't want to be hurt again. So part of that is recognizing that that is what's underneath it. There are attachment wounds that are pretty raw. And so whether it's an intimate partner or a friend or a doctor or a therapist, what I'm hearing is needed for you is a sense of safety. Like, can I be real and open with you, and you be there and hold space for me? Am I willing to be open with you and give you a chance with the risk that you might end up rejecting me, abandoning me, neglecting me? Am I willing to risk that? And that's an internal question that you kind of have to wrestle with. But underneath that is, what do I need that would help me feel like I could do that?
And I was thinking, like it isn't, Troy, I'm going to tell you, like, first meeting, I'm going to tell you everything about me and see if you reject me. Cause that's like, so I always feel like it's in layers, like I'm going to test the waters with this. I'm going to test the waters with that, and, if that works, then I'm going to go a little deeper. So, it is, I mean, that's growing a relationship too. So, but I was also thinking, you've had 100 people that moved away. You have 100 friends in all different areas now. I mean,
Right?
like, you can eventually go visit people everywhere. So that's meaningful to life as well, as to have, to have those connections. Even if you don't see them in church on Sunday, you are still connected to them, in a broader sense. So
Right.
this person goes on and says, how do I identify and get clarity on my wounds, and how do I identify my safety needs? That's a great question.
That is a great question. My first initial answer is you could go find the Finding Peace workbook. It's available on Amazon. And chapter one has a pretty expansive wound assessment in it. Um, I tell people, if it gets triggering, don't do it all at once. Like take your time in doing that. But it's a pretty comprehensive evaluation of all the 6 wounds that I've identified in the workbook: loss, rejection, abandonment. And then again, after you've identified those, there's some core beliefs that are attached to those. There's almost a chain reaction. When my wound gets hit, it activates some core beliefs. And there's 3 genres of core beliefs. Number one is the identity genre. There's something wrong with me. I'm flawed. I'm defective. I'm bad. I'm too much of this, not enough of that. The second genre is about safety or trust. There's nobody I can trust. My world isn't safe. I can't depend on anybody to stick around, that kind of stuff. And then the third is a sense of powerlessness, like there's nothing I can do. So part of understanding and exploring what your safety needs are is, number one, identifying what are my primary wounds, what are the core beliefs that really are running some of the undercurrent of how I then am experiencing the world. So if I really have this core belief that there's something wrong with me and I really can't, there's nobody who's going to show up for me, those 2 core beliefs are going to prevent me from being willing to reach out, try, interact with other people, because I already know that there's something wrong with me, and you're not going to show up for me anyway. So I've already come up with the conclusion of what I think is going to happen as a way of preventing me from being hurt, which is probably not an accurate conclusion, but that's that core belief. And so then I say, okay, so what do I need then to help me understand that maybe I can trust this person? And so maybe globally you have asked that question, and maybe specifically you ask that question. So for example, you're going to see a doctor or a dentist or something. What do I need from this doctor, or what do I need from this professional to help me feel like I can trust them a little bit, that I'm not just gonna dismiss them? Do I need some assurance from them? Do I need some validation? Do I need to look at their degree on the wall. Like, what do I need to be able to know that this is maybe somebody I'm willing to trust, even a teeny tiny bit, and you go from there.
So one of the things I wanted to point out too is Troy moderates a men's group on Friday mornings on sexandrelationshiphealing.com, and they talk about this type of thing. I think any of the drop-in groups, but specifically that one, and he alternates on Monday mornings too. He's really helping out a lot on our site, and I'm so appreciative. But I would invite you to get the workbook. I put the information in the chat, so I would invite you to get the workbook and just start. And you're, what I perceive is you're going to really have to be willing to take a little step towards vulnerability, because to look at those wounds and then to start talking to people about that, that's how it's going to change. You sitting home and working on the workbook by yourself and thinking you can fix it is, yeah, I don't think we heal in isolation. And specifically when we're looking at wounds that keep us isolated from others, taking a step and joining that men's group on Friday and going, yeah, I got the workbook, and here's where here's where I'm starting to identify wounds. It's really scary. You know, will feel like a huge risk for you, but man, I bet the support you will get and guidance to move forward, would be worth the risk. I'm going to invite you to take a leap of faith on that one. So, any other questions for Troy? I mean, other thoughts, what have you seen with people who have worked through that work through the Finding Peace workbook? What do you see, kind of the process for them as they start identifying those wounds, and are like I think what I'm trying to say is, as you're able to identify them, do you see them being able to go, oh wait, that's my wound, and so I can engage in a different way?
Yeah, it's very helpful. Like right now, I'm teaching an online relationships class, and we are helping the partners be able to see each other's wounds and just notice that both partners are hurting, that both partners have some of these wounds, and being willing to see your pain and then having compassion for your pain can really do a lot to shift the relationship dynamics, and not feel like the anger and resentment sometimes, because oh, you're hurting too. I thought it was just me. I've told the story before where I had a couple who was sitting on the couch, and I had them looking at each other in the eye, and I was using a mantra by Thich Nhat Hanh, that says, darling, I see you. Darling, I know you're there. Darling, I suffer. Darling, I see your suffering. I'm here for you. And we're doing that, and about halfway through, the spouse says, I can't see his suffering. I don't want to see his suffering. I'm
Mm.
hurting so badly. I don't want to see your suffering. And a light bulb went on for me of like, oh, that's why we've really been struggling with the couple relationship, because it the pain has been so acute for her that she didn't have the ability to have didn't have the ability to see his pain either. But as we really recognize that everybody's hurting, we all have wounds, and and we can recognize that, we're able to me, be a lot more compassionate and kind to each other, and also end up being more kind and compassionate to ourselves. And the beauty of that is that, at least for me in my journey, is I'm not as angry anymore. I'm not as reactive anymore. I'm a whole lot more patient with myself and those around me. I'm not perfect, but man, there's just been a whole lot more peace in my life. Even though I go through some really challenging moments, it's more grounded. And I've watched that happen with many of the clients and individuals I've spoken to. They find a greater purpose. They feel more grounded. They feel more confident in dealing with when the next time their wound's going to get smacked. So it's a beautiful thing to watch that.
So I'm gonna take there's a couple of questions. I'm gonna take them out of order because you just mentioned a partner. So how do attachment wounds, how does all of this apply to betrayal trauma?
So one of the wounds is betrayal. So we have loss, neglect, rejection, abandonment, and abuse, but one of the wounds is betrayal. And betrayal is when you had a sense of trust with that person and then they did something that violated that trust. And that can be just as profound as an abandonment wound or a rejection wound or an abuse wound. It can be just as profound. The same kind of manifestation happens with this wound as it does with some of the others. With betrayal trauma, the core beliefs automatically start getting activated. Well, there must be something wrong with me. I must not be pretty enough, sexy enough, not willing to do this enough. Immediately, those are some of the things. And then I can't trust you, the core belief of safety and trust. I can't trust you. I can't depend on you, which may be it may be an accurate belief. But it is a belief that we have to examine if that makes sense. But I can't trust you. I can't depend on you. I'm never going to be able to ever trust you again. That's where the powerlessness comes in. My life is ruined. Those those core beliefs then become the driving force for what happens next. So the wound and then the core belief. And then if we don't find a way to heal some of that wounds, then shame will show up and hijack the healing process altogether. And so part of this is helping the betrayal partner know, hey, I am enough. I'm enough. I matter. I have needs. It's okay for me to have boundaries. It's okay for me not to tolerate that kind of behavior, and it's okay. I can stand up for myself. I can have dignity and respect even if you don't happen to see that for me. I can do that for me and really tap into the sense that I am enough. I have power. I have choices. I can choose who I'm going to trust. To me, that's the empowering part of working through betrayal trauma. And it's being able to identify that I have light inside that is separate from whatever you were doing over there. And maybe I can see that you were hurting and why you did what you did. Doesn't necessarily excuse the behavior, but I can have compassion for why you did what you did. But I also know that I'm enough for me.
And I do think with betrayal trauma, probably with all of them, but it's really easy to go, this person who I was in a close relationship with betrayed me. So therefore, if that person can, then anybody can. And so what you were talking about is this person is not safe. That does not mean every person is not safe. And having to think through and figure out, where can I find safety? Where can I find support? It's a lot. They are big wounds, but with support, we can get to a different place with that. So, okay. So, next question. I have a tendency to be attracted to married women. This is from a male, and set myself up for failure when they can't have the same feelings for me. Why do I continue to do this?
Mm. That's a really good question. I would probably need to know a lot more about your life to be able to sort that out. But there's something about married women that provides comfort for you. And I don't know exactly what that is for you, but there's something about that. So, a couple of things. Number one, you cognitively already know that they're married, and you cognitively already know that therefore they probably are not going to come after you. There's probably also a part of you that's saying, yeah, but if I could get them to leave their family and come after me, how amazing would that be for me? Like, how much would that prove that I'm enough that I could to get that? So underneath that is probably some wounds of rejection, which is interesting because we tend to do put ourselves in the same situation where we have to face that wound again. So there's probably a rejection wound that's going on that you keep trying to work out by reaching out to these married women and then they reject you. So then it's like, oh, I have to deal with this rejection wound again. There also might be some abandonment going on for you. There might be some betrayal wound going on underneath it. And for whatever reason, it's driving the behavior to keep reaching out. And I tell people it's like when we're little kids and we're on the playground and the game didn't go the way that we wanted it to go. We say, hey, redo or do over, and we do it again to try and have a different outcome. That's what we tend to do as adults unconsciously. We put ourselves in these situations where we're hoping it will be a redo or a do over, that I won't get hurt this time. I won't get rejected this time. But interestingly, you there's a part of you that knows exactly what you're doing and setting yourself up to be rejected. And so I would tie that to a sense of shame, but maybe the judge saying, well, you're not enough, or the impotent one saying it's never going to get any better, or the rebel saying you can do whatever you want and who cares what damage it's going to do. I'm imagining that these behaviors are tied to a shame, which is really going to need you to explore a little bit about am I believing about myself, and don't get so caught up about the behavior as as what is it that I'm believing about myself that I'm hoping this behavior will do for me, what I'm hoping this relationship will do for me, and then asking the questions, well, will it, and is that really what I need, and is there a different way to actually get what I need? So without knowing you personally, that's the best that I can do. But there's some undercurrents that are going on here that you may want to dig a little bit deeper, do a deeper dive on.
Yeah, and you said, and if I got them, how amazing would that be? And then I also thought, if you got them, would you want them? Like,
Hmm.
I mean, is the goal just to be in this? I want the unattainable. And as long as I can never get them, then I don't have to be in an intimate relationship with them, because I'm always looking for somebody who, is clearly not available. So
Right. It's a catch. It's a style of sex addiction. Patrick Carn says 10 styles, and one of those is the catch and release. It's all about the chase. I don't actually care about the person. It's just it's the thrill of chasing the person, and then if I catch him, well, I got it. Who cares? Throw it
yeah,
back in the
now I want the
river.
next one.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So, but the chase, it's the need is, why do I need that? What is that doing for me? What is it that I think it's proving to myself when I catch him? Oh, I caught him. I'm enough. Look how amazing I am. Uh, well, you already are enough. You don't have to prove it.
And being vulnerable with somebody who is attainable, like who actually wants to be in a relationship, would be a very different experience. So
Hmm.
I would encourage you to look for, like you were talking about, so you've wrecked somebody else. So if she does leave and she wrecks her home, and like, oh yeah, I deal with all those phone calls. It's really
Hmm.
unfortunate. So
Hmm.
okay. Is it normal for a dismissive, avoidant type to not be in intimate relationships, like not having a girlfriend or not date for a number of years?
Absolutely. Very, very normal, because that requires some sense of vulnerability, and so it's easier. Well, I wouldn't say it's easier, because I'm sure that loneliness is hard too. This feeling is that, um, being that vulnerable is too much, and so I'm more comfortable not pursuing that. So that's a very normal behavior that goes along with that.
And it's going to take risk to put yourself out there. Dr. Rob talks about, dating is a numbers game. You have to be willing to date. And he talks about having a posse. So for someone who's a dismissive avoidant type who doesn't have friends, like creating the posse to help you date so that they know you well enough to know who's going to be a good fit for you. So there's a number of steps, to look at it, and how to move this forward. But just taking one step is forward movement. So I'm glad you're here, and I encourage you to get the workbook and start working through that, and then join Troy's group on Friday morning. That would be there's 3 steps right there that would move you forward. So okay, can you get betrayal trauma from childhood relationships? A trusted friend tricks you and makes fun of you, for instance.
Yeah, absolutely. This is a person you trusted. You can get a betrayal trauma from anybody. It doesn't have to be your significant other. You could get betrayal trauma from a coworker. I've heard stories of where you have a team and you're working on something, and then your coworker goes in and talks to the boss and presents the entire idea that y'all have been working on as if it were their idea. That's a betrayal trauma. Like, and depending on how resilient you are inside, that can really break you, and they can be really hurtful. I've heard a story. Marianne Williamson, she ran for president earlier, but she's written several books. Her first book that she wrote, the publisher stole it, and she couldn't get it back. It was brand new author, didn't understand how it all worked. Publisher stole it. That's a huge betrayal trauma. So it can come from anybody. It doesn't have to be just from your significant other. Somebody, you had a relationship with trust with somebody, and then they violated that trust, and it leads you then to develop a core belief that says, I'm not sure I can trust you. Well, I know I can't trust you because your behavior has proven that, but I am not sure I can trust anybody either.
Well, and I'm thinking you're an adult and you remember this. This is a biggie deal. This is,
Mm-hmm.
so if you're tapping into that and that comes to mind, that was had to be incredibly painful for you, as a child, and probably has, colored relationships as you've moved forward as well. So, yeah, I mean, the stuff that happens to us when we're kids is, I think imprints. I think on a deeper level, we gain some resiliency, we gain some knowledge, hopefully as we get older. But the stuff that happens as kids is, I mean, like I remember the names kids called me when I was growing up, like a
Right.
poof, like when I heard that, I was like, oh, I can feel that, that's hard. Okay, next question. I feel like I am an anxious type. My wife sounds like an avoidant attachment, as she has fired me, filed for divorce. I betrayed her by watching pornography. Is there a dance that an anxious and avoidant attachment play that can be damaging? As in, with me being anxious, what are some do's and don'ts of interactions with my wife that I can build safety with her? I look at my phone a lot to see if she has texted me, for example, or whenever she wants to talk, I stay there to listen as long as I can.
So yes, there definitely is a dance. If you want to read the book by Sue Johnson called "Hold Me Tight: 7 Conversations to Something About Your Relationship," Sue Johnson is one of the top leading experts in relationships. Her work is on attachment theory, and she identifies what she calls the demon dialogues. And so when we have two people and they're wounded, I call them the burpees. So the burpees are an acronym for these behaviors. B stands for blame, P stands for protest, R stands for rescue. I totally put them in the wrong order, but whatever. And E stands for escape. Okay, so when my wounds get hurt, I will probably engage in one of the burpees. I may start blaming, pointing fingers, saying, you're bad, you did this, you're awful. I may also go into protest. Why are you doing this to me? Why are you treating me like this? I shouldn't be treated like this. I deserve to be treated better. I might go into rescue. Oh, I see that you have a problem. I'm going to try and tell you how to fix it. I'm going to do it for you. I'm going to give you lots of advice. I'm not actually going to hold space, or I might escape. The principle with the burpees is that the moment that you engage in one of the burpees, you invite your partner to do it with you. And that's where the dance is. So if I go into blame, my partner's probably going to go into protest. If my partner goes into protest, I'm probably going to go into rescue. And we do this little dance for a little while, and then eventually that gets overwhelming, and so I check out. I get on my phone, I leave the room, I drive away, whatever that happens to be. So there is definitely a dance, and the dance is, I'm trying to get you to understand that I'm hurting. I'm not doing it in a very effective way. And ironically, the other person is trying to get you to understand that they're hurting. And instead of actually calming down and holding space and recognizing, like, oh, I see your pain. And can you see my pain? We do the dance. And the dance will go and go. It's an infinity loop. We have some videos on that from earlier that we've talked about. It becomes this infinity loop where you get stuck. There are two two really simple but highly effective ways to be able to get out of the burpees. And these are tactics that have been taught by the leading FBI hostage negotiators. I can't remember his name right now. But the first one is mirroring. And instead of just doing the burpees, you mirror. And what that looks like is you just repeat like the last three words that the person said. You can, when I'm working with people at the beginning, I have them practice saying, well, what I heard you say was, and then saying repeat, like repeat, but you can actually take the phrase, what I heard you say out, and just say the last three words. So, for example, I'm really angry because you ate all of the pizza that was left in the fridge that we had last night. I ate all the pizza? Yes, because I was wanting to have that for this morning. I was really looking forward to it, and now it's gone. You were really looking forward to having the pizza? Yes, because I didn't want to have to worry about making breakfast this morning. Oh, so you were worried about making breakfast, or you didn't want to make breakfast. That is the example of mirroring. The second is labeling, which is not this. I don't know why they call it like this, but labeling is basically just calling out the emotion, naming the emotion that you think the other person's feeling. So I'm hearing that you're angry, or I'm seeing that you're frustrated, or I'm kind of getting the sense that you're overwhelmed right now. And so those are two very simple things that you can do even when your spouse is angry or frustrated, that actually every time you do it, it calms down the situation just a little bit. Mirroring and labeling, mirroring and labeling. The whole time that I'm doing that, I'm actually not making it about me, which is hard to do. But when I'm anxious, like you identified, you have an anxious attachment style. I'm so worried you're going to leave me. I'm so worried that you're going to check out, that you don't want me anymore. You're going to be gone. My life is going to be over. I get all needy and worried and all that. Notice where all the energy is in that. Me, 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 me. And no longer am I able to actually see that you're hurting too. It makes sense. Like if you got in a car accident and you ended up in the hospital for a while and you were on traction and you were in pain a lot, it makes sense. There's going to be a lot of pain focused on you. It's all about you and your recovery. People are going to come visit you, all that kind of stuff. It makes sense. But in healing, you have to recognize you're not the only one that's hurt. Without going into shame and saying I suck as a person because I cheated on you and I looked at porn, that doesn't help. But being able to say, hey, I see your pain, and let me hold space for you. Let me repeat and mirror and label a little bit. And as you do that, the other person does tend to calm down and gets to a place where they can actually have a dialogue. And then you can share, well, can I share my perspective? Is it okay if I talk a little bit about what my pain is like? And if both of you are learning how to do mirroring and labeling, that works out really nicely.
Yeah, I talk often about, the acting out the addictive behavior as a symptom, and there's always underlying wounds, and it's not an excuse for the addict. Yeah, like it's not a pass that they automatically get to do this because they're in pain, but it is a reason. And so I think what you're talking about is when people can get to, not just what's happening on the surface, but really be able to own their pain and to be able to share that in a safe space. That's a gift, and really can change things for a relationship. How can I offer a more genuine empathy to my wounded partner in those times when I'm feeling weighed down by guilt? That's a great one.
Great. So let's differentiate between guilt and shame. Okay. Guilt is a feeling like, oh, I made a mistake and I want to fix it. I feel badly that I did this and I want to make it better. Guilt is a healthy emotion, um, because it helps us want to do some restoration. Shame, however, is what most people are actually feeling in these types of situations, and shame is the feeling that says I am a mistake. I'm bad, I'm flawed, I'm defective, I'm no good, I'm just a horrible piece of doo doo, like whatever. that happens to be, and that usually is what hijacks our ability to then show up for the person, because in guilt it's not about me, it's about you and that you're hurting, and I want to see what I can do to make some restoration and reparation for that. In shame, it's like, oh, I'm horrible and I'm awful, and you probably are never going to trust me again, and it's just going to be like that. So that's important. And in the question that you asked, you said, how can I show genuine empathy? Well, shame and empathy are like the exact opposites of each other. If I'm feeling shame, what I really need to be able to do is step out of the shame and have empathy for you, putting myself in your situation and trying to see your pain and your hurt without what I call the judge saying, and yeah, and it's all your fault and you're a horrible person and I can't believe you did that and you suck and it's never going to get any better. It's a little we do some work a lot about that on Fridays, of how we develop resilience to that voice of shame that's beating you up. But it's similar to what I've said before. If you can actually see your partner's wounds and you can say something like, darling, I see that you suffer and I'm here with you right now. I'm here with you. I want to hear more about your wounds. Tell me more about it. Tell me how much it hurts. Tell me how deep it goes. Is it just because of the things that I've done, or does this go even further back to previous relationships? Does it remind you of other things? And man, I can do that a whole lot better if my judge is not saying, yeah, and it's all your fault and you're a horrible person. If I really am there wanting to just be in this moment with my partner and saying that. Now, afterwards, I might be calling up a friend and saying, oh my gosh, I feel like such a poopy person because of everything that I've done. And I talk through my shame with another person and they say, yeah, I get it. Like, and they can love on me a little bit. That's helpful for me. But in that moment, I'm trying really hard not to focus on me. I'm trying really hard to understand what their experience was like, and then to douse that with love, compassion, kindness, patience, doing all of that. That is easily said, not easily done, but that's the secret sauce to having empathy, is caring about the other person's wounds, even when I'm hurting myself.
Yeah, yes, and yeah, I was on Super Saturday Recovery Summit. I was getting a little flustered, and I took a deep breath and just like calming myself, grounding myself, and and going, okay, this is going to be challenging, and I'm going to move through this, and so that I could be fully present again. So getting some things in mind that you can go, okay, when this is going to happen, when your partner is going to be like, and I need to have empathy. What can I do to settle myself to know that I don't have to listen to the judge, I don't have to listen to all those voices, that I can, like you said, look in your eyes. You say, I'm here for you. I want to hear about this. Be genuine. You aren't going to do it perfectly, and that's okay. You're going to try, and it takes practice. All life is a practice. So just trying is going to be a start. But I 100% agree. Get support afterwards, because I'm sure you're going to be triggered, and things are going to be. That's why we have to heal in community. So. Okay. How can I tell if narcissistic tendencies are surrounding addiction, or if it's something that won't change with recovery? Oh my God, every active addict is a narcissist. So in recovery we can change, so but it's in recovery, it's not just in abstinence. But what are your thoughts?
No, I agree. Uh, uh, and that's a label that gets thrown around a lot, like, oh, I'm married a narcissist, or I am a narcissist, or I don't really get caught up in the labels. I understand what it means, which is I'm completely involved with myself, and I don't really have any awareness of what's going on around me with anybody else. And yeah, when we're in our active addiction, I don't have any awareness of what's going on. I don't even think about the consequences, how this might get me in trouble, how this might hurt my partner. I don't think about any of that stuff. It's just all about me in that moment. So those are those are pretty present in addiction. And I've met some people who are in recovery. They've been in recovery for a long time and they're still narcissistic. They still make it about them. That's okay. That's we figure out who we feel safe with and who we don't, and that's okay. But part of this to me is, yeah, it's all y'all's your own journey. But for me, my hope is that I can hold space and be present with other people and not make it about me. Not to be hold on so much to my identity and who I am and what I do. Because honestly, all of that can change in a moment. It can go and be gone. So I just for me, and I'm just speaking for me, is just trying to be present in this moment with whoever I'm talking to, being there with them, looking them in the eye, and trying to connect with them. And I can't do that if I'm getting in the way.
Yeah, I agree. Every addict, really believe in active addiction is a narcissist because we're focused on us. We're focused on our acting out. We're focused on, how do I get to do what I want to do, despite the consequences. So learning in recovery to connect with other people, and that being self-centered and all about me doesn't really provide a meaningful life. We can learn, but you're right. I've known a lot of people who are in recovery for a longer period of time, and they're still, the messages are still all about them, or they're touting how good their recovery is, but their family life is a disaster because it's still all about me. So we can learn. Dr. Rob has talked about in his career with all the people he's worked with, he's only had a handful of people who were truly diagnosed with narcissistic personality disorders. Now that's a good thing, because that should be very hopeful that, that means most of them have been able to, with recovery, with learning, change. The a narcissistic personality disorder, that they are who they are, and that there's kind of no hope that they'll learn to have empathy, because that's just not who they are. So, okay, next question. Oh, it's my betrayal that wounded my partner. Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you for owning that.
Yeah. Yeah. But you can learn to do things differently. Your partner can get support. Wounds can heal. I've got a cut on my finger, and you were talking about, things bumping into. Do you know how many times I've bumped that finger? Like the
Right?
rest of my hands when I'm touching things are fine, but that little finger, one little tiny cut, it's like half an inch long, and I have bumped that, and I just go ow, 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 and I thought, yeah, that's what happens is that these wounds
Hmm.
get bumped, and those are painful, but this will heal, and then I'll get another one, but it'll be, it'll be a little different. So.
Yeah.
Okay, next question. I haven't had the best luck with therapists and have seen a ton over the years. It's like going through a revolving door. I don't know if that's related to my dismissive avoidant type or what. How can I find a really good therapist who's an attachment Jedi? Oh, and good word, Jedi, that I
Yeah.
can
It's
really
a
trust and help guide me through this attachment disorder, so that I can finally have deep and fulfilling relationships in my life, and maybe even find a significant other. So you have to go to the Jedi part. You have to
well,
like.
well. I don't know if you can see behind me, but I'm definitely a Star Wars geek. So lots of Star Wars references. Love that. I tell people that finding a good therapist or a good coach is like trying on a couple of pairs of shoes until you find the one that you really like. And and hearing a little bit from your story, it sounds like you've probably tried on a few pair over the years. Again, it goes back to really having a clarity for you of what you need. What is it that you need? And understanding that we're all imperfect and we're not going to be able to be everything that you need, but having an idea of this is the kind of temperament that I would really like the therapist to have. This is the perspective that I really think would be helpful for me. That does this therapist have? And you can interview them. You can ask them questions. Send them an email saying, "Hey, the research is interesting." Therapists will hate me when I say this, but the research is interesting. It actually doesn't really matter the modality that the therapist uses to help the person get better. When we do the research, what matters the most is the relationship that happens between the therapist and the client. If there's a connection, even if the therapist doesn't have that many skills of knowing how to help you work through it, but you feel like they care about you, and they are willing to listen to you, that goes a long way. And so it's finding someone where you actually feel like they care about you. And I've had therapists that I have personally said, hey, this relationship isn't working for me anymore. I appreciate what you did, and I'm going to go find someone else because this is what I need now. It wasn't that I was unhappy with what they provided. It's that I didn't feel like they could provide what I needed anymore, and I needed to go find someone else. So part of that is believing that I'm worthy of going to find someone else to help me get my needs. The other part of that is recognizing what do I need, and maybe even making a list of some of the things that I'm going to look for in a therapist, and then start looking around.
And because you've had a revolving door, I'm going to give you a little challenge. The next therapist you check or you go to, commit that you are going to go for 6 months or some period of time, because it's really easy to look and go, oh, this person isn't right. Oh, this person isn't right. You don't even know them. They don't know you. So the last couple times I've needed to find a therapist, I've gone, I am a person of belief. I said a prayer about I need to find a person and I need to find the right fit. So I reached out, and I had reached out the last time I reached out to 3 different people. Only one called me back. Perfect fit. Like part of my, like, even if I'm not seeing my therapist, like I know my therapist is there for me. Like that's how much I value that. So I kind of trust the process of finding the right fit. I also agree that it's well, for this chapter in my life, this is what I need. This one's still good for me, but in previous, it's like, okay, this one's good for this chapter. Now this person has helped me get to this level. Now I need the next person that can help guide me on the next chapter. That's all good, but the revolving door is what I'm reading, and I'm like, they're never going to get to know you. You don't really get to know them, and that feels like part of that whole dismissive avoidant, like, oh, I'm just on to the next one, on to the next one. So
Hmm. If it's
okay.
feeling uncomfortable, that's probably a good thing because
Yes.
you're learning.
Yes.
So don't run, stay, and lean into that a little bit. Lean into the
And share with your
discomfort.
therapist. This makes me really uncomfortable. That's what your therapist is for. To,
Mm.
like I've had people that have gone, I can't tell my therapist. I was like, that's who you're supposed to be telling this stuff to. It's like they're a trusted person that you're supposed to, like, if therapy isn't working, how much better, if I said, Troy, like this, like I'm having a hard time, this, I don't think you're, understanding what I'm trying to say here, then you go tell me more. And we have this conversation, and it may be time to end the therapeutic relationship, all good, but at least I've had the conversation without the stuff that I've made up in my head about why this isn't working. So anyway, that's just me. Okay, next question. Speaking of an essay going into guilt or shame, I'm reading my impact letter to my husband with our CSATs on Tuesday. It's been 2.5 years post D-Day and a year since full disclosure, which that kind of stuff drives me nuts. I'm having anxiety about him actually being able to hear me without shutting down. What tips do you have for the essay, and what tips do you have for me around the anxiety?
Um, so what I'm hearing you say is that you really are afraid that you're not going to be heard, that he's not going to see your wounds, and that he's not going to have compassion for those wounds. And there's some anxiety about that. And probably rightly so, because there's probably been a trend where been, he hasn't seen those in the past, and he's been dismissive, and his shame sucks him into a place where it makes it all about him, and then he can't show up for you. So the fact that you're identifying that and writing that out is that you have some awareness of that. When I usually do a full disclosure or these kind of situations, I usually invite the partner to have reached out to some friends who are going to be available. Sometimes even, I know COVID's a thing, but even maybe they're waiting in the lobby near the end of the session so that when they come out, they're not alone. They have some people waiting for them who can just be there and provide some support. So whether that's virtually or actually in person, knowing that there's somebody, even if they're not sitting in the session, and hopefully you trust your therapist enough to be able to hold space while this is going on, but knowing that there are some other people who can show up for you, even if your husband hasn't learned how to do that quite yet. And that might reduce some of your anxiety because you know that, okay, maybe he doesn't have the capacity to do that yet. I can see that he's trying, and I'm really grateful that he's trying. But I do have a backup plan here of how else I'm going to be able to get some of my comfort and soothing in place if he doesn't do it in the way that I really am hoping he'll do it. The second is that addicts usually don't have a whole lot of empathy at the beginning because of what we've talked about earlier. So empathy is not this magical thing that just like shows up in your head. It's a skill set, just like learning how to play the piano or learning how to do Zumba or whatever. It's a skill set that you have to learn how to do. And the fact that your husband is trying to write the letter and he's doing what his therapist is coaching him to do tells me he's trying to learn how to do this. And he's probably going to get all messy. Um, what Brene Brown says, it's our shitty first draft. And yeah, it's probably going to be really shitty, but it's okay. It was the first draft. And then he's going to try it again and he's going to try it again. And if you're wanting to stay in the relationship, it's going to be something that both of you are going to learn how to do together. So hopefully that's helpful, but make sure you've surrounded yourself with some people who can hear you and love on you during this process while he's trying to learn.
Next question. How can I learn to heal wounds from a lying porn addict and learn to trust he will stop being a liar after recovery? I have major trust issues now.
Stephen R. Covey says that the only way that you can get yourself out of a situation that you've created in is by behaving yourself out of a situation. That was really a horrible rephrasing of what he said. But the principle is that the only way that you're going to be able to trust him is that he starts telling the truth. And I know it's hard to know whether he's telling the truth or not, but the only way that he's going to be able to restore trust is by being honest. So a lot of couples will do the check-in Fanos, Fanos. If you Google it, the first thing that you see is a great explanation of that, where every day he's checking in and he's telling you how he feels and he's telling you what his sobriety is like and and major along the way. Of course, you have major trust issues. That's a betrayal wound. He's violated your trust. It's him being willing to lean into that. There's a book called Worthy of Her Trust, and Rob has the Out of the Doghouse. Both of those books I think are really helpful for the guys to learn what they can do to be able to start restoring trust. But the bottom line is he has to behave in a trustworthy fashion. He's an addict. He may slip, he may fall all over the place, but if he's able to be willing to step up and say, "Hey, I slipped, I struggled," that's part of being honest, not hiding, and not you finding out three months later that he's still been lying. That's not going to restore the trust. You can't do anything to make him tell the truth, but those are some boundaries and some things you can say is like, if you really want me to be able to trust you, here's what I need to see, and laying some of those out specifically, and then hopefully he will do that.
So we've got two more questions and we're going to try to get those. We only have a minute left. So I
Okay.
recently noticed that I'm feeling something weird that created a lot of things for me on Monday. I reached out to some guys that I talked to on our sex and relationship healing site, as I call it, and found out it's likely anxiety. I'm trying to understand more about this feeling and how I used to use that feeling to either push myself um, into highs, acting out to get a dopamine rush or get past the feeling because it felt so weird, awkward, and a lot of feelings I don't like to feel. What's the best way to process that in the future? Is there a step one, step two type of thing? Yes, that's like we were talking about earlier. All feelings get numbed out when we numb out the bad feelings.
Thank you for this. Anxiety, as you may remember, is a mutated emotion. So the core emotion is fear. And fear is a sense that something bad is going to happen and I'm powerless to stop it. So we would encourage you to sit there and think, okay, what am I afraid is going to happen and what do I feel like I'm powerless about? And when you start to figure that out, then you, number one, can challenge that belief. Am I powerless to stop it? Do I have choices? Is there a way that I can be able to create safety in my life? And all of those are ways to be able to calm it down. The second is one of the things that we talked about earlier, labeling. Label the emotion. The moment that you put a name to what you're feeling, it sucks some of the power out of it. And so even if you're seeing, I'm feeling anxious because, and then see if you can fill in the blank. I'm worried that, I'm afraid that, and starts to name some of those things. The Finding Peace worksheet is a great way of being able to find that, and you can find that on the website, an example of that as well. But what's the situation? What's causing the anxiety? What is it that I need? And how can I get that need met in a healthy way? And how can I remember that I'm enough? It walks you through that process.
And the thing I had to learn in recovery was feelings don't kill me. Like they can be uncomfortable, but like if I just learn to sit with it a minute, it's going to be okay. So, okay. So the next one, and this will be our last one. Troy, when you mentioned that the betrayer or addict does not initially have empathy skill set and has to learn it, how does that apply to my husband when he used empathy skills perfectly with the OP? Uh, OP.
Other partner.
Oh,
The
other partner. Oh, okay. I was thinking AP. So I have audio where I heard these skills used between H husband and the OP, and he was perfect. He never uses those skills with me.
So I don't know a lot about this situation, but it depends on how long that situation was going on with that other person. But it's almost like when we're early dating, we put on these magical things. We can do these magical things and we make ourselves look like we're really amazing. But then afterwards, we stop doing that again. And it's part of the addiction, in my opinion, of am I actually being real and authentic, or am I doing this as part of trying to woo you, catch and release? Like, what is this all about? What's the motive? So, number one, what I'm hearing from that is there's a lot of betrayal for you. There's a lot of betrayal. That's a huge betrayal wound because you saw from the, or you heard from the audio that he does have the capacity to do that. And he wasn't using that with you. For him, he's able to say, yes, I did use that. And here's part of what I was trying to get at. And as I'm looking at that and I'm evaluating things, here's why I want my relationship with you. And here's what I am wanting to do to improve. I'm sad with both of you, because I know that you both are feeling a lot of pain and sorrow around all of this. And what I want to try and remind you is to try to stay out of the burpees. Because if I go into blame and say, well, you were able to do it with so and so and now and all of that, blame is a reaction trying to discharge my own pain and discomfort. I get it. But the moment I blame, I invite my partner to go into the burpees with me, and we will not find peace. We will not escape from that if I'm doing that. So part of that is being able to say, this is how it hurts me. This is what comes up for me. Can I share with you a little bit about my woundedness? Can you see my pain? Can I see your pain? And not making it about the behavior, but talking more about the wound itself and what I need now in this moment. Because neither of us can go back and rewind time. But what do I need in this moment that can help me feel even 1% better than I'm feeling right now?
Yeah, I've been using a lot. A technique is I statements. I feel, I whatever, rather than you, because it's immediately you. And people, like you said, burpees shut down, it doesn't go anywhere. But if I say, my experience of this was, my feeling was, been able to progress through some very difficult conversations, using those. Not fun, but progress. So thank you. We're out of time. I am so glad you were all here. Thank you again, Troy. We'll see you the 4th week of February, which will be here before you know it. So
Right.
take
Well, it
care,
was wonderful.
everybody.
See ya.
Bye-bye.